I'll admit it, I thought that Georgia might have a little bit more challenging a game against South Carolina. That's not what the betting public is going to find when they go look and see that Georgia is a 28-point favorite against South Carolina, a game that, you know, 28 points is a lot. That's 4 touchdowns. That's 4 touchdowns you're supposed to cover. But having watched South Carolina now, look, you can't struggle with Furman late into the first half. And they were losing. If my memory serves correct, I watched a lot of football this past weekend. So I thought it would be near 30. I mean, there's a lot of problems at South Carolina right now. And it's really showing up. You've got to have one player, a singular player, Spencer Rattler. It's just not. You have to have a lot more than that, and they don't have that right now. I mean, they have, you know, a team that's, you know, getting pushed around a lot by North Carolina. They've got a team that, you know, against Furman, you just shouldn't, like, it's okay to not get off to a great start, but you should not be losing to Furman, okay? That just cannot happen. Clemson was losing to Charleston Southern yesterday. There's a lot of not great out there on this side of the country right now in terms of college football. You know, well, Florida State looks good. South Carolina does not. They just don't. They're not good. You know, Shane Beamer, he's doing a lot of the right things, but you got to put it on the field at the end of the day. And if you're not going to put it on the field, what are we doing? 28's a lot. 28's a lot against a team that some people seem to think is a rivalry game. Listen, yeah, I'm about to rant on this deal, okay? Every game Georgia plays is not a rivalry. Every game is not a rivalry. You can't, we're not going to sit up here and act like Georgia and South Carolina is the same thing as Georgia and Auburn or Georgia and the Gators or Georgia and Tech. It's not. It's a big game. Now, this year, it's not really a big game. So, you know, whatever. But the term rivalry, I mean, we've got to be a little bit truer to what the word actually means. And in college football, you know, Ohio State, it's a bad example. Alabama has a lot of rivalries. They have, you know, obviously Auburn, certainly LSU, Tennessee for sure. It probably goes Auburn, Tennessee, then LSU. Georgia and Alabama are not rivals. They are teams that are teams that are really good, that have been really good, that play each other in really big games in moments that really matter. Georgia and South Carolina are not rivals. And I'm not meaning it in a disrespectful way. And let me be more specific. For Georgia, this is not a rivalry game. For South Carolina, it is, no question. So this is their number 2 on the list behind the Taters. So that's one reason why that right there, that notion, and then number 2, that they have so many players from Georgia, so many of their players on their roster over the years have come from Georgia, and they've been really good players. Some of the Brinkley brothers. I mean, they've had probably the best quarterback that South Carolina has ever put on the field is from Georgia. So they certainly have had a lot of that crossover, but right now, what's going on, these two programs are not in the same universe. 28-point line? I mean, what does that mean for when, Kentucky it's just not there right now in the league. I mean, Mississippi State had probably a really good win over Arizona because they won. I mean, like, look around the league. Alabama's getting pushed around by Texas and pushed around. I mean, not like Texas totally deserved to win that game. You should totally get our friends at Eco Poly in your backyard. 20-year warranty, okay? UV protection. This stuff's not gonna fade. The link is down below. 15% off, free shipping. You want to get an even better deal, like you're doing the whole deal in the backyard. You want to redo some stuff. Buy a pool. This stuff's be awesome. Go down to Dodge County. Go down to Eastman. The deals are even better down there. Check out the link down below. When you're thinking about this game, all right, I've been to this game probably more than any person besides Claude Felton. If you don't know who that is, But, so I've seen this thing in person all but once since 1993. And, when you think about Brandon Bennett over the top, when you think about the 2012 win that South Carolina had over Georgia, even the 2014 win, the 2019 win, this is a really big game, really big moment for South Carolina. Typically it comes at this point in the season where the game kicks off. A lot of Georgia wins are not even memorable. I mean, do you remember what happened last year against South Carolina? They flooded them, but do you remember the game? Brock Bowers went off. Do you remember the 2015 game? South Carolina made Grayson Lambert look like he deserved to be in the College Football Hall of Fame with the way he played. That was Steve Spurrier's last visit to Sanford Stadium, completely blown out. The Hurricane game in 16, do you remember that game? I do. I was at that debacle. Not a well-played game. 17, that was probably the best that these two teams have been since the 12 and 13 times. 2008, the game in Columbia, super hot. What else is new? Super hot game, 14-7. Georgia sort of survived South Carolina. We are past the point where we're watching games that Georgia is surviving South Carolina. We're coming on a decade here where they're not surviving. All complete due credit. In 19, South Carolina deserved to win that game. But, it's 2013, so 14, South Carolina, just a Jeremy Pruitt loss right there, if there ever was one. You're allowing 38 points. You want to know the difference between where Georgia was and where they are now? Let me know the next time South Carolina scores 38 against Georgia, okay? With some guy that wore a glove at quarterback, Dylan Thompson. So, 15, Georgia blowout. 16, that was not a blowout, but that was, Georgia was solidly winning. South Carolina in 17 was a pretty good team, I have to say. Georgia solidly beat them. 18, blowout. 19, upset. 20, blowout. 21, blowout, but a slow motion blowout. 22, blowout. Carolina, Georgia fans are something else, man. When you're walking around red zone and you can feel the nervousness in games. And I remember in 13 and 14, Georgia split those games. They had lost something like 3 or 4 to South Carolina, and people had the audacity, Georgia fans, to say well, I really think South Carolina's past us. What are you talking about? Carolina won the division once in its history. Georgia won it back-to-back years one of those times. They lost to South Carolina. One game doesn't mean you have passed someone. Has Texas passed Alabama? Well, I wouldn't make that pronouncement. They passed them last night. No doubt. Passed on them last night. But, South Carolina is going to have a hard time in its world of passing Georgia. There, I said it. I don't care. It's the truth. It was the truth 30 years ago or 40 years ago. It's going to be the truth now. Georgia as a brand, Georgia as a whatever, you cannot compare those two things. What South Carolina has an opportunity to do now, right now, and it's going to be hard, is to pass Clemson, and it's to pass Florida. I just, pass them, not have a couple good years, but really zoom on pass. It's going to be tough. Clemson, even that, man. I mean, like, let's just say Carolina gets them 2 years in a row. That's a blip on the radar screen for those two. I mean, that's an anomaly. That's kind of what they have done to one another through the years. I mean, Clemson strings together like 4 or 5 wins in a row. Carolina gets 2, and then Clemson will get like 6 or 7. Like that's sort of what those two have always done. With Georgia and South Carolina, it's been like a 3-to-1 ratio, something like that. But lately, it's been even more lopsided than that. South Carolina has 1 win since 2015 in this thing. So 28 points is a lot. But I gotta, I took Georgia to cover this last week and they pushed. I just don't know if South Carolina can play buttoned up enough football for an extended period of time in order to keep this thing at 17 or, I don't know. We're going to see real quick. Like, I think that South Carolina, if they come into this game and in the first quarter they're not down 7 or 10, they'll keep fighting. There, again, are a lot of kids on that roster who are from Georgia, who have ties to the state. I mean, Shane coached at Georgia for a limited amount of time under Kirby. So there's going to be motivation there. But listen, man, let's chill out on criticizing the chain crew and discussion of eating habits and all those things. The scoreboard works at Georgia. So I don't want to hear any of those, the editorial comments from Shane Beamer after the game. But the guy, it's 2 things with him. He's definitely got them pointed in the right direction, or so it seems. Let me rephrase that. He's got them pointed in a different direction than the wrong direction. Whether they are pointed completely in the right direction, I don't know. And the trajectory is not what people felt like it would be. I will admit, coming into this thing, this season, I didn't know what to make of South Carolina. I thought they were a team that Georgia could have a real big fight with. It's hard for me, after watching 16 quarters of Georgia and South Carolina play, to legitimately tell y'all that I feel like that's gonna be the case. They have a named quarterback in Rattler, but he is too loosey-goosey with the ball. Those are pretty good deep ball, but you got to execute against these guys. Like, if you pop a big play, I mean, Georgia Tech did that against Georgia. I mean, LSU did that. They lost by 20 or more. So how do you function at Sanford, which is a tough place to play, and when you don't have everything you need to do that? I don't know. I mean, maybe Georgia will turn it over a few times. But I expect South Carolina to turn it over at least twice, because I've watched them enough to see and know there's going to be pressure. Man down. There's going to be pressure on Rattler. He does not always make wise decisions, generally speaking. So I think 28's not so far from being right. Thanks for watching.